Hello, this just to clarify for you, for those of you not following the species coach videos. I've donated Babadyalros or Bodyalros as an individual. If you say to an individual Babadyalros, that's positive. If you say Bodyalros, that's a swear. It's a new kind of swear, though. Where and how we need swears. A breaching method knew that we were going to need swears at the locations, areas, and states, and or as leaders of that, or as countries leaders. Any grouping of countries from this. This is not a joke, but evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere come per how nature uses its identity of relativity to positive and negative, the way everything is distinctly, but also non distinctly, and simultaneously, but also with the slash hyper simultaneous. And the slash is relative to scientific appreciation of where and how. Three parts of its complete volume are increasing simultaneously, where value is nature slash nature's value, and distinctly from how value is nature slash, the opposite sequence slash simultaneous nature. The same way there is order and there are means for value because there are means to use how the identity of left to right or of east to west, is distinct. There is a greater identity that is distinct, not distinct simultaneously, but further hyper simultaneously. See, the identity, the hyper simultaneous, has individual species bodies, shown that there are other individual species bodies, and there are individual species of individuals with all group differences being generated by what comes also with the slashes, three invisible but still discernible parts of itself. In the languages, plural. The ancient languages had nature themselves before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. Note from off the campuses. Everyone was forced to roles. Two, blaming other things. Rules also blaming other things, others, ourselves, for things that nature is holding in demonstration of a human factory nature breaching method, having stayed entrenched through the foundations of modern countries A through Z. This is why and how there were suburbs designed in northern colonies and in southern colonies before America's founders were born, and what went along with those colonies was a torture, extortion, slavery method already entrenched against everyone. I learned in notes at Central Connecticut State University there were laws where if anyone had been found out to have been speaking outside of internationally monitored conversations, they did bad things to those people and everyone around them. And they're still doing this. And the reason they get away with that and other is because this breaching method showed to use remotely. For example, it shows the identities of the law that they have to hide. They communicated other for James Madison and our founders behind him and his plan, and how then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan and to force the other nature of founders, the third nature of America's founders, the Constitution unabridged, and why and how it has language that says we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. And other, in other words, shows that. In other words, how could they interpret Marbury versus Madison correctly if they have the words of our founders and self-valued roles with the words of our founders used exactly the way they communicated with declassified afterwards, not to have them interpreted, not to have that complaint pretended to be science, not to pretend that someone needs to have research when they have black pupils, whites of eyes, and means to discern how we all have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time, with the exceptions part. And the part where we have the same color eyes is black and white. And this breaching method assigned other to be communicated for nature, that it still has other communicated for it. They're pretending we're bringing theory because the quote experts don't have that. The reason we need experts originally and still, so that truth is applied, used for lies. And then the breaching method shows how they have to hide that, including preemptively, actively grouped reasons, and relative to how they're showing simultaneously what's to come. This is why and how the suburbs were designed for the torture, extortion, and fact-cheating nature slavery of America's founders, sickly distinctly from everyone else. And that's including Native Americans who were fighting with the Native Americans before our founders were born, and those countries were fighting with themselves. If you're watching YouTube videos, look at the suburbs in America, Russia, and Ukraine. These were designed as a facade, where tactically ulterior from that which is hyper native, hyper simultaneous. So in other words, it's not a joke. Bobadyalros is positive. And if we say Bodyalros, it's like, wow, that's a swear. But it doesn't mean, like, in other words, think of the swears we have. They're just disgusting things to say. Because it's a way of showing emphasis. In other words, there's a quality of fact-cheating nature. That is three ways: criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer. I'm not pleased with my judge. Black pupils. It is time. See, we have wars, and they have the same problems. We can go like that, better than free. Everyone's fighting with economics. Simultaneously, the people have only remembered themselves. See, everything the breaching method does, it uses difference / differences. Remote self-value rolls with it remotely to hide behind. And to better than perfectly. So you guys, the nature of debate / S. I say debate singular too, because there are singular things that no one would or could get away with debating if everyone followed mandated laws it really is meant to be, and or the nature of it. Excuse me. So there is worse than criminal incompetence that we all know of. We can all sense it. We're going to learn to delineate it. In other words, regarding what witch trials were about. You don't leave out witch trials. See, everyone can't. The nature of debate is to possess using things that aren't even debatable. Pretend that those are the things that aren't debatable. If you examine, in other words, tactically delusions wrought too, and with the experts on like psychiatry and reason and nature, also ones with badges, also ones with gavels. Originally and still, this is what witch trials are about, even if they were completely made up. They were about that breaching method that everyone forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, only capable of discerning needs to counter and overcome, where there are formal collusions between the law, either them or some ways of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness to the logic, nature, timing of it, use of names /s / names at locations, areas, and states, where there's a mass identity theft, fraud, slander method manifest as nature shows. We all know about this instantly and agree, because at A through Z, sickly distinctly, the campuses have had communicated and have had self-valued roles with communicating and having communicated. Tactically ulterior, tactically other than our founders communicated. That's why we were told by them to communicate that they are James Madison. That's one of the reasons. The Native Americans are our first nature of founders. Then grouped, there are James Madison, his plan, because it's on Constitution Unabridged. That's that which was hyper native pure. That's why president slash chief is cipher too. It is not just decipher. No, with the cipher is not just that they did classify about the breaching method, but how they did not have free speech because everyone's speech was measured and through their own as a species body of individual bodies as that system abridged. And then further layers other interests. In other words, having been part of the sustained roles with it, where it propagated, self-cultivated before modern religions were even founded, before modern countries were founded, and right through them. That's why in America and Ukraine and Russia, from America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs look almost exactly alike. And they were, if we had free speech, actually proper, sane sciences, not criminally foreign influence, let alone criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. Forgiveness is because that's all that was ever known, rolls with that. You don't bring up the economies, our founders would have said, while you have other things communicated for ourselves, using our words the same way the breaching method set up to only allow being used. Excuse me. The third nature of our founders, for example, then, you know, how they had to force everybody at different locations, key figures, trapped by the breaching method in new ways, and then having no means to survive unless they were going to help James Madison, our founders, plan behind him. And this is exactly for the same reason Native Americans who did not want to fight with Native Americans would want to syntactically. And then they would agree, no, for peace, as criminal insidiousness natures of peace uses. But nature will and does keep continually demonstrating. In other words, we can't entertain the logic and syntax as we have, because nature shows us the difference between positives as criminal insidiousness natures of positives. And nature shows us the difference between the hyper criminally foreign influence, identity of relativity to these questions, these subjects. Identity, as every identity is, even if one is made up, as relativity to positive and negative simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. This is why and how we are appreciating and needing to appreciate more than one word for a verb. This is why that also comes with discernment of how its identity of volume is appreciating, is showing us the appreciating how we're appreciating the participle natures, for example, about being grouped. The gerund about this, the infinitive. The infinitive is a phrase, but it's with a verb. When you put the preposition to before a verb, now you have an infinitive. And see that word in the root of infinity, and see how there's that extent of time of the past you know is true always, and you know there's a part beyond that, but as parts that we know are true that we know we don't know about in the past, but do we know there's an extent of the past that we do know about is true always, and there's an extent right now we know is active that is true always. And there's an extent of the future, even if we are not here, we know the value. Even if the seasons aren't here, we know their value is here now. to an extent that is true always. And those three parts of time are grouped. And we know there's a part of time beyond this that we don't know about. And so that's grouped also with the part of time before the part now that we know we don't know about. You know, we'll examine this because it's not only as time, the identity of forever nature. That is one of the hyper additional things it is. The identity of the hyper simultaneous, so to speak, regarding. So in other words, too, Bobadyalros sees. You could refer to an individual, or that's a term for everybody at once. But we're being led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. So in other words, and we're by as a way that to make sure we're correct, we can be able to discern the three parts of itself, inseparable from the order of the finite, the smallest finite details, the detail slash s. We could observe its identity of volume science further distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously slash hyper simultaneously with the group details and with the simultaneous. And this is one of the things that we are being shown. We are an individual species body of individual bodies with the identity of the hyper simultaneous, generating more of the parts of of itself that are inseparable from the smallest finite detail. Then further, this is why, for example, it comes with the description of how we could discern its complete identity, even though we're inside of it. It's too great for us to see out some ways, and simultaneously, other ways it's too finite for us to see. Other ways it's simultaneously actively expansive beyond our means. But wherever with any subject, like these three parts of time, how they are grouped. In other words, distinctly from the other parts of it. That's true always. And it comes with correlation slash hypercorrelation. This is why how we're appreciating the difference between a subordinate clause or a clause, independent clause or subordinate clause. And not the subordination doesn't mean positive or negative. In other words. So, and where there are exception nature, you have to, in other words, these are systems, including being and having been entertained syntactically, that can't be entertained in other words, the words proper. I lost my train of thought because someone was beeping by or whatever. But in other words, Bobadyalros, there's no joke. That's Bobadyalros. You can call it an individual. If you say Bodyalros, that's a swear. But it's not. And the reason you would call that swear to a person is if they're breaking the species science. Because we're going to unite the species volume science to do things that we all agree about, to make temporary moves as a species body, the only way we could do it. That will make temporary slash lasting positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And as an integrity that can make value also sound checking to make sure. See, nature wants us to sense. In other words, okay, the people need the tactical. In other words, wants us to sense we hunger and thirst as a system that is now being and having been only increasingly abridgments of the hypernative system, the one that is the value of the Constitution unabridged. And the reason, really, reason slash really, why and how most important is language regarding how, where, and how and why we have more rights that are too numerous to have to list them. We have identity theft, fraud, slanders, all kinds of natures of organized crime, slash crimes that a breaching method only allowed to entertain, with people who entertain free speech and examples of their which they think is free speech regarding economies, for example. And then they want and need to value the nature of debate, containing and having contained quality slash qualities, aspect slash aspects, and nature as criminal insidiousness nature slash hyper criminal insidiousness nature. It is relative to understand it this way because before modern countries had wars with each other and used each other's names in their own, and through that, and the difference of that is used where and how this breaching method employed, what witch trials were about, which no matter who made them up, they're about the breaching method, the torture, extortion, slavery method that was already entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly, and how sickly non-distinctly too. That is also having been employed by the hyper foreign that no one wanted collusions with. That's part of the reason that they're fighting with each other. And originally and still, how you counter. In other words, the suburbs are designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures to make use of where and how the breaching method employed. Systems tactical ulterior from natures, from what it communicates with our black people's white divides, our hunger, our thirst, our appreciation for water clear, unpolluted. The whole ocean is polluted. Only so long one little species body could force Earth's entire special difference through and as our own, too. Forced from here, Leith of Hadith. Forced space nature transfer. Because it will only stay equally positive identity of relativity to all parts of space slash existence, its complete identity. Earth has no special difference where we could have a temporary slash lasting positive slash, positive value nature progression. Positive value nature, another word, in evolution's gifts, means out of nowhere. And as yourselves, the Bobadyalros sees the full, proper species body. See volume science. This is correlation per its identity. It's not just three, it's three ways grouped distinctly from how 5 ways. With time, it's 3 ways grouped here in 3 ways, like 3 parts of time. Active, the part we know we don't know about that is to come, and the part that we know we don't know about that was before. In other words, so it shows us to hold what we know and we don't know. It shows us a native system. We hunger and thirst, not to be having to pay some guy to give us plastic. Oh, but without that plastic, you would be thirsty. That's because the torture, extortion, slavery method employed the suburbs, let alone the suburban slash urban, per the syntax of Hartford regarding its location area state. In other words, too, Wethersfield and Hartford in Connecticut, they have roles communicating other for our founders and then for George Washington, because our founders are distinct from our presidents, per how we are told to tell American history. There are tons of exceptions, and exception nature comes with this as evidence too, because it wasn't as offensively used to change and fake what people say when they use short words properly regarding predicate acts. So this is how, for example, Little Rap Guy has the whole cartoon value nature system, countries A through Z, and with the help of the black pupils that he invented with others. In other words, in a cartoon, but it's an example of real life. Everyone's extorted, tortured, extorted, in fact, human nature enslaved, therefore physically. We could observe this even against our founders and self-body roles with it. So you guys want to have roles about the knowledge of good and evil, about your knowledge of good and evil regarding events in history. And with that, you want to measure and maintain. In other words, you can't defend yourselves with someone who tries to bring this principle as our founders told us to found this principle. Themselves as James Madison, and Cipher as president/chief, per decipher. That was declassified about how they didn't have free speech and why they didn't have free speech. Even functional to the breaching method was how, even though it was positive to everyone, to counter how sickly distinctly everyone could discern how they were sickly non-distinctly victims of the same thing, just like the suburbs. It's not debatable. The breaching method put the excuses up and showed them how to be used by people, by the identities of the law. Certain type of victim/hyper victim, victim predator/hyper predator, collusion/S, and having been, and only capable of being. Otherwise, that body is sensed individually, even if it grouped, even if it is a majority of people, and even if it is everyone simultaneously. This has suits and ties, counters and exceptions and defenses of their logic, nature, aspects. Can't defend that. And afford discern, they need to pretend other. It's why it's important to pay attention to all the hyper-evidential proofs that there has not been integrity at locations, areas, and states A through Z, everywhere the human species body stands. In other words, that's why they're named this really more so, because everywhere the body stands, even if they don't call it that, it's a location, area, and state. There's a trinity there. Every little finite detail has three identities of possession over it, distinctly from the other. 5 ways it's grouped, as we'll examine, because time is not the only way. There's those 3 parts of time we know we don't know about, and there's the 3 parts of time we do know about. But it's the same body as the hypersimultaneous, as it has the other species bodies with the same quality aspects in nature, like 2 eyes. Consciousness, even the bugs. Vaccines. I teach us things below. Since some ancient times, that referred to as ancient times. This breaching method from off campuses knew that campuses increasingly would not be able to defend themselves and afford to be discerned. Convictions, or to be, let alone to protract. Syntax with convictions or nature proper, like with the syntax relative, where the science's voices are relative, and with the nature of debate, and with the value of their difference. In other words, we need, at countries A through Z, really why and how our names are forced to be shared as criminal and ceaseless natures of peace or war, torture, extortion. The answers are because the A through Z have stayed fake together. At the same time, that is a maintained outcome because it maintains the people, forcing the leaders to entertain economic debates. Now, in other words, there's no way to stop that unless we pull out means out of nowhere with a whole species body. Plus, in other words, we could do things, makes it all of a sudden, all these things that we're charging ourselves for with taxes, time, nature, we alleviate even the need for that. See, we have jobs employed where a part of a torture, extortion, slavery method, and with times involved. Oh, you don't pay your bill, that's it. You really lose your house. In other words, you see what I'm saying? It's not equally. People speak about equality. We must be led with everything by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Because equally, increasingly, equality is about when it's also positive unto itself as that which can be used to answer all our questions properly and best. Equality is about the extent of that which is true always, that we can discern with each subject, not valuing that truth used for a lie, even by people that are not there too, motivations too, narratives. In other words, and roles with nature debate, because the nature debate just has one someone who calls themselves white or black or what they think. They jump into the conversation and they make people a group think, and that stays the debate rather than the breaching method that employed that. In other words, the breaching method and how nature itself communicates with black and white. Tactical artillery that has been allowed to be voiced with the evidences, even though it's that non-distinctly against everyone. Everyone wants to go, oh, well, here's how I'm saying it's not. You can't tell I'm lying. In other words, your delusion's raw and you're lying. But so are the experts on, mental health. They're involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake conversations with people, fake transcripts, personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors, all natures of politicians, their family members, their neighbors, all along roads and routes. Forgiveness is because that's only to show what's manifest. And the sequence shifts relative. And how they keeping out the other names involved. And simultaneously, other ways, they're wanting and needing that to be the subject and they're bringing them in. Because there's also a hyperforeign name involved. So, in other words, a whole bunch of people involved with the countries in the news have roles that wear in how the intelligence community, including the military, foreign and domestic, their state, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, planting fake things, putting as roles with little magic tricks, which not even a magic trick, just it's exploiting anomaly, exploiting phenomena. Relative in the background, no one's looking in databases that originally and still have this breaching method showed the people at all locations /S that it needs to hide, where it made them have no choice but to ignore and or to blame on other things, others, ourselves. Why and how they were forced to, ignore or speak about and have their words changed properly regarding a whole bunch of ways and evidences and hyper evidential things that we could show to use to show. For example, one of the things that witch trial is about, even if it was made up, there are collusions and use/S of names on all sides of criminal and civil cases at the interbranch locations, the lawyers, the family members, or in other natures of names and conjunctions to those people, and their differences and the intelligence, foreign and domestic, and or the names next to the campuses, next to their houses, next to everything, next to the parks, at corners of streets, driving by. this is built. This shows individuals, groups, and simultaneously all voicings for humanity. How it needs to hide how it was already used through an system syntactically, substantially, tactical terror from what could defend themselves and their nature uses and convictions, the short words, time achievements, etc., and afford to be, let alone to retract, words proper regarding predicate acts like World Trade Center attack predicate acts, ones like wire crime acts and methods roles, mail crime acts and methods roles, various natures of organized crimes roles, and through natures of industries that are also planted screens for fake motivations roles. At the same time, in other words, so they have the identities of their differences, the identities of the law, where they spoke about that, and where they've got involved with cases and people from backgrounds, their investigators, what's said online, they're changing and faking what's said online. And they know that no one's going to go back and correct them with that. The FBI, Wethersfield Police, the British Superior Court, Hartford's Courts, Connecticut's District Court. They have their Facebook pages, collusions with proven child abusers, digital of kids, digital upskirt pictures, more on Twitter, with the FBI involved with that also. A whole bunch of people with the name Leahy pretended through the mail they had conversations with me. And a whole bunch of people came to my street from other areas to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He's also involved with them. And the people involved with wire crimes, increasingly with Wethersfield Police, with them. Wethersfield Pizza, involved with people on my street too, that used to live on my street, a Colo family and an O'Brien family. And people tied to them have been with judges and prosecutors and their family members, putting fake phone transcripts, sequence shifts, falsified police reports, roles with the news that pretended conversations with me as a kid with the police that never were at all. And in other words, and then as an adult. And they pretended through the news because they had to hide lab regressions. Because on a mass scale, this breaching method showed the identities of the law. They made summary convictions by the law, at locations, regularly, in layers of reasons, and informally too, in private. Tactical terror from how they were supposed to. All exception nature come with demonstrations of how this breaching method is recorded, using and having used the standing branches of government interstates, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, and retired judges. These are also names next to Fox to Connecticut News, and WFSB, and WTNH Connected. Increasingly, the family members of judges tied to the same house/S with wire crimes and Wethersfield Police forging and switching names. I've asked Judge Napolitano many times. See, they prevent you short words, and they take collusions with the FBI and the courts already changing and having changed digital evidences. Obstruction of justice, which was simultaneously involved with predicate acts, extortion, identity theft, fraud, slavery, too. They pretended as when I was an adult that I spoke with them as a kid, and they pretended such as a kid, with kids increasingly involved with criminal enterprises. And they're pretending now that that's why they have the WTNH at the corners on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and with exceptions involved with them too, with federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders. There's a Dr. Gilmore involved with drugs and medicines, crimes, fake conversations with me, and tactically delusions wrought, criminally foreign influence readings of American history and of reality, too, with a Christina Sioka involved with him pretending he had conversations with me. And she gave me some stupid, she's involved with obstruction of justice with some stupid, true or false test. And then to ask me to do a mental math problem, things like that. I told her I want to speak about things. She hid what I told her. Increasingly, I didn't even know. In other words, increasingly, people tied to Christina Sioka involved with people with the name Scalora with Florida, and with people with the name DeMar, and Kalal, and their educators involved with foreign and domestic military. They said, and people with the state judicial branch office and corrections offices that confessed, recorded also people with the name Mackenzie. I do not know a Kate Mackenzie. In other words, people at my middle school are increasingly involved with state police families to interstates with these names. Whiting Forensics has a Joshua Schumack involved with a guy named Michael Emmett with the Board of Education, and other people with retired police chiefs, and people, doctors with the name Leahy, involved with their kids, with judges and prosecutors with drugs and medicines crimes, alcohol, fake uses of alcohol, fake use of drug evidence, trying to change what's recorded, using truths for life, spying on our kids with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, sick people that run in, hide life progressions, where they paint fake transcripts with people, fake ties, fake natures of ties with people. At the same time, they in other words, need to get them on paper. These are their roles with the names next to Harvard Hospital through time, too. In other words, I only know what's his name? People, so a whole bunch of people tied to a former mayor Gold, like a Lenny Triglia. And then years later, his mother, I don't know her. She knows that. She was influenced to make a fake exception of knowing me. These are people that maybe know my parents, things like that. They spy on people so people can't talk about things. The agencies. Now I want a response for the principal child defender's confessions and more names he brought up. And I want to know a response for the police chiefs retired and their roles with the police switching names and making confessions and walking away. And I've been asking them since I was a kid to get on paper. There's also an officer, Jerry Miller, who brought up the name Kerr. They're all, I believe it's Meadowgate. People with the name Kerr, people with the name DeMauro, and Kalal, and people tied to them. I don't know the names of them. They know my name. They have roles planting evidences with foreign and domestic countries, and they're educators involved with sequence shifts in the World Trade. They have extended family members also involved with the World Trade Center attack. There are proofs also with the witness protection program and with prosecutors interstates and rules grouping and haven't been shown how they need to hide, how they were collusions with how they grouped criminal enterprises and with how they defended and or defend their descriptions of the problems at the streets and or at the prisons and or the value of how these are bad people with predicate action with facts methods, criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence at locations A through Z, areas and states, everywhere the human species body stands. Because this breaching method showed them how to speak for the law. They're child abuse. They had other communicated in America for their founders at campuses A through Z too, as styles using differences. In other words, please follow mandated law. Judge Napolitano, Fox News, and WFSB and WTNH. Please follow mandated law. Please, YouTube. I'll swear this. I swear I'll tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. This is no joke. I need them on paper. The Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and their sources too. In other words, there's a lot more things. There are a lot more things. These are people that are in the Britain, Connecticut, that have roles with every campus I went to in Wethersfield and intercities. There's the names Sioka and Mendez, who are involved with wire crime acts and methods, falsified police reports, identity theft frauds with Wethersfield police, increasingly with overt criminal enterprises too. People lying about themselves and other with it as sequence shifts, as they don't even have right to, as the ones involved with this, increasingly people directly and indirectly involved with the Scalora, people involved with the Afghan leaders and kids, also as the ones involved with the people with the name like Kate McKenzie. I don't know her. And the people with the Weathersfield Pizza, there's a Stephen Stocko. His educators recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts methods, predicate acts and predicate acts methods at the campuses. People associated with a Paul Zano and a Ray Clough with a Johnson and Wales and Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University. I only know Paul Keller. Paul, I don't, they have a Paul Zano made confessions about his role. I didn't respond to him at Central Connecticut State University or at Trinity College. We had no words. In other words, and then he has something to do with that, also with people with name Luigi Guerrero and a whole bunch of women, his family member involved with the campuses, Central Connecticut State University and Rocky Hill High School, has more people involved with the principal child offender and the Weathersfield police chiefs. Has something to do with Police Chief Cintron. Since years before, he was reportedly having murdered someone at that corner, because he has roles with Saudis, also with whiting forensics through time. And the Saudi attackers themselves, too, were used remotely. In other words, they have language experts. A Dr. Shub is also involved with them and next to the news locations. And with the probate courts, judges, family members, and people that work with the court, all tied to the same houses near me, like named Smith and Cololo, that the police also recorded and brought the names up to make it look I was bringing names up. And they also said years before they were going to do that. I don't even know. They make confessions when people walk by, like on the sides of the high school. Those people will tell you they don't know me. They were influenced to pretend other. They like act and someone takes your picture. As something, in other words, there's mass identity theft, fraud, slander, evidence is planting. They hid a whole bunch of things from the parents when I was a kid. And now when I'm an adult, I'm watching them do it. They're attaching your kids and yourselves to fake and changed communications with yourselves. And they're putting fake transcripts and databases tied to it. They're having kids tell on each other as ones that are only allowed to be victim / hyper victim, A through Z. And the relativity of who's getting over and who's benefiting from that difference is used too. In other words. So something to do with food bag too. People that associate with food bag in the name Chandler, Daryl Chandler, reportedly has a sister too. And they're educators associated with him. I don't know him. He sought me out to confess, demonstrate, record, confirm. He has roles with people at Trinity College, also involved with some untimely deaths and use /s of them, even if they were made up, as people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with predicate acts roles on off Fox Connecticut News, its social media, and on off WFSB, its social media, on off Connecticut District Court, its social media, and like with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook pages, Harper Courts, before and after the World Trade Center attack, they have roles of predicate acts. And they force Saudis to collusions with them. And the Saudis forced collusions with themselves other ways at the same time. And the difference of that was simultaneously used too. So forgiveness is because you guys are making up what you lie. You can't be honest about what you think when you hear people mention predicate acts. And you have delusions right there too. So please, WFSB attached me with fake conversations with them and with others about the World Trade Center. And with doctors, they pretended I had conversations with as a kid and then as an adult. And one of them did tricks to make it look like they had conversations with me behind my back to my family when I was a kid and then as an adult. This is also one of the ones involved with proven with family members and people associated with them with federal evidence crimes involved with proven years apart, first forced child abusers, leaders of kids. And some of it too, more in other words, then and now is not proven but it's recorded discernible, including black pupils, whites of eyes. You leave that out, you're child abusing. Because that's what nature teaches. That's what we go to school for. To understand what it means, Constitution unabridged, and how and why we have rights that are too numerous to have to list. To be capable of listing simultaneously. So all kinds of programs and roles with intelligence next to Fox Connect News and next to WFSB were increasingly delve into this because they're refusing to identify themselves into Branch, Connecticut legitimately. All exception nature too. They use that and are being influenced to use that criminally foreign influence to pretend others from backgrounds. So please, you too, Anthony Wall, force Judge Napolitano to get them on Connecticut onto paper, one name and sequence. The Britain Superior Court and the Wethersfield Police regarding their confessions switching names. If they deny that or say that they don't know about it, put them on paper. In other words, because they confessed it. I want on paper. They have a whole bunch of times they came to my house and they're putting more and more fake things. They didn't respond to the letter I sent them too, because there are proofs they put fake letters before that and at Trinity College. And these are people involved with Canada and the border and the overt criminal enterprises at the same time, not legitimately unmarked police forms, and with Mexico, like people associated from Mexico with Central Connecticut State University, involved with a Claudia Scaloro I never had a conversation with. She's one of the ones involved with a Joe DeMoro, involved with home break-ins on my street, wire crimes with the police forms intercities. They confessed and recorded, demonstrated, confirmed that they have intelligence people associated with with Dean Judd, deans of campuses, like a Dean Keys with Tungus Community College. They have a whole bunch of different countries shared here and there. And people from Wethersfield, a whole bunch of people like Mark Violet and people tied to him, and with the Ray Kalo, involved with people from South Korea, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, planting fake ties to little kids. At the same time, with people from Italy, at the same time with people from Ukraine, at the same time with people from Russia, like a Peruta and others I don't know the names of. Involved, I never had a conversation with him. Tried to make a fake exception. In other words, I didn't want to be rude to him. He doesn't know me. He tried to make a fake exception. That is in demonstration of the same thing. It has roles with public television and with the news. And the locations next to WFSB at the same time, and the difference between the roles of Wethersfield Public Television and Rocky Hill. These are also people at the town lines. So rather than make me beg and draw maps and use all these people's names, why aren't you little cowards too? The ones that are in the background, but like get on paper, speak up for the parents and kids playing little games with planting and changing what's recorded. Speak up here. This is Wethersfield, Connecticut. My name's Anthony Wall. Get on paper get the police on paper. I'll show you what to do with the child abuser leaders of the kid. I caught them with that principal child abuser first. A whole bunch of people made things up and stole my identity at the same time with the news, planted fake things. More than one news location, as people too, with the difference between that worse criminally involved or the people with the location next to it too with the public television. It's not by accident. They're influencing too. The FBI has roles. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, he has co-defendants that are various natures of federal criminals from various distinct natures of federal criminals and their family members and neighbors who are simultaneously involved also with their lawyer, Robert Chevrolet, and people next to his locations associated with him, increasingly involved with predicate acts with Hartford courts and the Britain courts at West Hartford locations before the World Trade Center attack. And Eric Burgess, I never saw him on the campus of Central Connecticut State University in my life. He asked me for help. He was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having been influenced by people involved with the intelligence at Central Connecticut State University to play roles with World Trade Center predicate acts and force society's collusions with it. Faked audio and video transcripts. He confessed with Joseph Dennis also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed afterwards. They have roles with a park near West Farms Mall. I never played I would never saw either of them there. I never went to that park. In other words, in other words, that's one of the ones with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, all sides of criminal and civil cases, including with his co-defendants and their neighbors, as the ones involved with wire crimes with names near me, and a whole bunch of people tied to them, like a Rick Baglione, involved with these Leahy people with the name Leahy, and Brian Silver, involved with drugs and medicines crimes with kids, with doctors, fake conversations with kids, fake ties to kids, putting fake things in databases. They're involved with intelligence that tells them they have the right to lie. They lie about their motivations for it and their uses of it. They have criminally foreign influence, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Rick Faglione was influenced to lie about himself and me through time. They gave him one little trick by giving me a blind shot out of nowhere. I didn't even know him before that until that second. In other words, right when I was coming around a corner. And the people who told me to go there, I didn't even know who that was. They know that. These are people that are being and have been used at locations, areas, and states everywhere the species body is. They are shown that they cannot speak, they cannot afford to be discerned what nature shows, individuals, groups, and everyone at once regarding humanity and its impositions. This is the key is, not to leave out, a breaching methods rolls with it, even as a scientific value alone. One of the things that slavery was about, true always, it was a human fact, should be nature breaching method. Why did people who were enslaved agree to hurt people that were also enslaved with them, rather than be a unity? Because they employed those differences too. In other words, our founders didn't have free speech; they would have been censored. They had to force everyone to get the Constitution. Told us to get the Constitution on a bridge. Told us we have rights that are too numerous to list. And nature itself shows us we have to show the delusions that would not be. We could get rid of them when the voices of the law speak, when the exceptions speak. As people A through, as criminal and citizens, as people A through Z. Because that's what you are. Criminal and citizens nature is when you're speaking. I'm not even a lawyer. When you're speaking, when you're communicating, using our self-value uses of our founders' words, leaving out what they communicated, what they declassified about that. And as tools being used, because this breach is used to measure and maintain sense that there's collusion /S with self-value use /S of that. Let's examine what really the quality aspects in nature is regarding the convictions of the science's names, of their syntax, a shell. What really? In other words, the republic for which we stand will not operate properly without pantheism /hyperpantheism / exceptions. We need all trying our best, individually grouped and together, and that's where the species. The republic for which we stand came from a time when they were being led by nature's identity itself. This breaching method, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, and then sustained, needs to react syntactically to things no one knew how to react to. So they just, they did it wrong. And they defended that, not realizing more and more this breaching method was getting them to defend treatments, reactions to things wrong, with conviction, with the public for which we stand, with its identity of relativity /relativities to ourselves, and all that further /hyper relativity, relative. So there's a quality of fact, human nature as criminal insidiousness /hypercriminal insidiousness that is forced. And we're going to observe because millions of us want, since we are little kids, we want to have countered where we know, where we could discern sickly distinctly against, and we're sickly non-distinctly against colonists, against Native Americans, against colonists, and against ourselves, sickly non-distinctly. There is much that has never been countered. There is much that has been way, we have had means way beyond what we need. But everyone thinks, when everyone's speaking economic things like it, pretend we don't realize the suburbs were tactically denatured to cause everyone to need hunger and thirst through systems and food and resources and means through systems tactical from nature, where it speaks about, where nature communicates about positive and negative. It shows us the difference between criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative. It shows us the difference between, as lessons regarding why and how water is clean or not. It's how it's showing us about positive and negative, and the difference between criminal and seditious natures of positive. In other words, it's showing us there's a torture, extortion, slavery method, three ways manifest because of how it's going against its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that, where it has itself three ways, with every subject individually, and then further grouped, and then further simultaneously. This is what Shine shows. In other words, please follow mandated law. Someone told Judge Napolitano on his YouTube channel, it has to be this way because they plant fake transcripts. WFSB is Connecticut's Channel 3 News, and Fox Connecticut News, and WTNH, and their sources. They have been planting evidences at corners and with people involved with predicate acts at corners of the street, with FBI with them, and with state police families, and whiting forensics increasingly with a Joshua Julian, also with Facebook people, and the difference of the Facebook roles or the forensics names roles or the courts roles, the courts Facebook pages are also involved with sequence shifts and various natures of predicate acts, like the Britain Superior Courts, with rape threats. Since before I even reported the principal child offender abuser campus, there are people that were at my campuses and people that were campuses I didn't even go to that were tied to them already. But there were people that went to my campus I didn't even know them. I was never around them, and when we were the same grade, they call it sometimes the same class. So there's a quality of fact should be nature where they're making mistakes on purpose as collusion /S with predicate acts and databases. Increasingly, people tied to this former Mayor Gold and other mayors of Wethersfield and people associated with, and years ago as ones involved. Increasingly, you guys are obligated by the law to not hide and plot. Get the heck on paper with the interbranch. I asked you since I was a kid. The police and courts recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They put arrays of falsified police reports, changed the officers' names, and just put a charge with no writing, and then so no one could fake it. See it as roles with torture, extortion, slavery, refusals to identify themselves legitimately, as roles with wire crime acts, mail crime acts, and roles, all kinds of collusions. Increasingly, it's with people as people on my street involved, and people that came from other areas and associated with the same house and wire crimes with them now. Intercampuses, ones I never even saw on campuses, involved with the Wethersfield town offices, increasingly too, involved with this Michael Emmett. Michael Emmett, you have obligations to get the police on paper. And there's a Robert Rodriguez who's also involved with locations and people associated with the state police, and and educators of a Mike Roberts and Eric Jensen and Joe DeMauro and a Ray Reynolds are increasingly involved with predicate acts with names at each campus I went to and names next to them, planting evidence, identity, fraud, slanders. That's one of the things, because these are also people involved with the name Scalora that They said were their cousins. Kalal and Tomorrow names said that was their cousin, and one of the only times I ever communicated with them. In other words, when I was in school, just because we're in the, in other words, they grew up with the intelligence families and the difference of them or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of paper A through Z, the different, and the news are the names next to them, the difference of that, and the rules with the next to the state capitol has something to do with the rules with that. A bunch of people tied to, and as one's named Meano with sequence shifts, fake ties, fake nature ties to me, and before I ever knew him. In other words, his roles with modern pastry and a Mazzucato bakery with child abusers, leaders of the kids, and with names with and as names on all sides of Hartford Hospital and other child campuses, intercities involved. Fear God, please get them on paper, one name and sequence. Please judge Napolitano, do what's right, and don't make me keep begging for a name. In other words, maybe your Facebook page too involved with this. You were one of the people with Fox News. You guys have obligations too to correct Fox Connected News. A whole bunch of names next to their location too, but involved with the FBI and Thaddeus Grabowski. People with the name Domain. People with the name Mendez involved with crimes of Weathersfield Police with child offenders, sexual, medical identity. Their teachers are involved too. The educators of a Mike Domain increasingly involved with child abuses of kids of mixed natures at the same time. Dear God, Boxy, who disbelieves? Get them on paper.